Have you ever looked in the mirror and not recognized the person staring back at you? I don't mean just physically, not the tired eyes, the messy bun, or the oversized sweatshirt you haven't changed out of in 2 days. I mean deeper than that. I mean staring into your own reflection and wondering, where did I go? That's what motherhood can do to you. That's what single motherhood will do to you. This episode isn't about parenting tips or how to balance it all. It's about the quiet grief no one talks about, the loss of self, the invisible weight of doing it alone, and the moments when you realize that in taking care of everyone else, you forgot to take care of yourself. My name is Rachel. I'm 32 years old, and I've been a single mom for 5 years. 5 years of doing the nighttime feedings, the sick days, the school drop-offs, the tantrums, the dentist appointments, the birthdays I pulled off with nothing but dollar store decorations and prayer, alone. But what I didn't expect when I became a single mother wasn't just how hard it would be, it was how lonely it would feel. Because no one really prepares you for the kind of silence that sinks in after your child falls asleep, and you're left sitting there, in the dark, wondering who you used to be. People see the strength. They admire the resilience. But they don't see the breakdowns behind bathroom doors, the skipped meals, the empty bed that feels colder every night, or the dreams you quietly buried under piles of laundry. In this episode, I'm not going to sugarcoat anything. I'm going to tell the truth, the raw, unfiltered truth about what it means to be a single mom and a woman who's trying to remember her own name. So if you've ever felt like you're disappearing behind the role you play, whether you're a mother, a caretaker, a daughter, a provider, this episode is for you. You are not alone. Welcome to Soft Truths. Before I became a mom, before my world turned upside down, my life looked manageable, maybe even promising. I was 27 and working a steady job as an office coordinator in downtown Denver. Nothing flashy, but it paid the bills. I had my own one-bedroom apartment in a modest but safe neighborhood, a fourth-floor walk-up with squeaky stairs and creaky pipes. But I loved it. My walls were painted in soft earth tones. I had a little reading nook by the window, a bookshelf I was ridiculously proud of, and a second-hand record player that crackled when Norah Jones sang. My days had a rhythm. Mornings started with a strong cup of black coffee and a 10-minute meditation I tried often unsuccessfully to stick with. I'd listen to podcasts on the train into the city. I liked structure. I liked knowing what was coming next. I'd go to work, answer emails, organize the supply room, and sneak in a few doodles in my planner when no one was looking. At lunch, I'd sit with coworkers who were just close enough to laugh with, but not close enough to know what scared me. Evenings were mine. I'd come home, light a candle, and put something simple on the stove-boxed mac and cheese or canned soup most nights. I'd put on a comfort show like The Office, or if I was feeling ambitious, I'd pull out my watercolors. Painting was my thing, my escape. I wasn't amazing, but I didn't care. It was the one time I could be messy and quiet and still feel like I belonged somewhere. I went on the occasional date, though nothing ever stuck. I wasn't in a rush. I had plans save a little more, maybe take a trip to Oregon, maybe go back to school part-time. I didn't know exactly what I wanted, but I had the freedom to figure it out. I remember those nights now, like they belonged to someone else. The long walks to the corner store, the late-night journaling, the slow weekends filled with silence, which back then felt boring, but now I'd give anything for. Back then, I didn't know how good it was to just be Rachel. Not Rachel the mom, not Rachel the provider, just me. And I didn't realize how quickly she'd start to disappear. I met Michael on a Thursday night in April. It wasn't some romantic movie moment. There were no sparks, no slow-motion glances across a crowded room. We met at a friend's birthday dinner, the kind where no one really knows half the people at the table and everyone's pretending to have a good time. He sat across from me and made a joke about the cold breadsticks. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I was tired of pretending to be okay around people who didn't know me. Michael wasn't extraordinary. He didn't have a high-paying job or some grand life plan, but he was easy. He texted good morning. He remembered my coffee order. He listened when I talked. even when I rambled about dumb things like how much I hated the lighting in my bathroom. After years of surface-level dating, that felt like something. We weren't serious. It was casual until it wasn't. I remember the day I found out I was pregnant like it was stamped into my skin. It was raining. I'd been feeling off for days, and something in my gut told me to pick up a test, just to be sure. I took it at home, alone. 2 pink lines appeared almost instantly. I didn't cry. I just stood there, staring at that tiny window like it had punched me in the stomach. When I told Michael, he didn't shout. He didn't storm out. He just got quiet. A few hours later, he texted me. "You know there are options, right?" I knew what he meant, and I knew what I was going to say. I told him I wasn't getting rid of the baby. I didn't expect him to propose or move in. I just wanted him to stand beside me, even if it was shaky and scared. But instead, he disappeared. 1 unread message turned into 3, then 7, then none. Within a week, he was gone. Blocked my number. Deleted me from everything. As if I dreamed him. I wasn't just pregnant. I was pregnant and completely, undeniably alone. And I had no idea what to do next. Telling my parents was harder than telling Michael. Not because I thought they'd yell or disown me, my family's never been that dramatic, but because I could already hear the disappointment in their silence before I even opened my mouth. I called my mom one evening and told her I needed to talk. She came over the next day with a Tupperware of leftover casserole and a tight smile. I sat her down and said it in one breath. "I'm pregnant, and I'm keeping the baby." She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't even blink. She just said, "Okay." Then she nodded and said again, "Okay." But I could feel her pulling away, not physically, but emotionally. She didn't ask questions. She didn't hug me. She didn't say anything about love or support. Just, "Okay," and then silence. My dad wasn't much different. When I told him, he paused for a long time, then asked, "Are you sure you can handle this alone?" That word alone hit harder than I expected, because even though I hadn't admitted it yet, I already knew I would be. My friends tried to be there at first. I got a few, "You've got this," texts, some baby name suggestions, and an invitation to a mommy Facebook group that I never joined. But slowly, inevitably, they started to drift. Brunch dates got rescheduled. Phone calls went unanswered. Group chats became quieter. They were still living their normal lives, happy hours, yoga retreats, messy Tinder stories, and I was measuring time in prenatal appointments and vitamin alarms. I didn't blame them. Not really. But it still hurt. One friend, the one I'd known since college, told me gently, "I just don't know how to relate to you anymore." That sentence sat with me for weeks. I wanted to scream, "I don't know how to relate to me either." But instead, I smiled, nodded, and let the friendship fade like smoke. Soon, it wasn't just about the people I lost. It was about the space their absence left behind. I'd walk into baby stores alone, sit in waiting rooms alone, Google "how to raise a baby by yourself" at 2 a.m., tears streaming down my face with no one to text. There were days when I didn't hear another adult voice until a customer service rep answered my call. No one told me that loneliness during pregnancy can feel like mourning, not the loss of life, but the loss of your life. The community I thought I had slowly vanished, and in its place was silence thick, heavy, and uninvited. And it was in that silence that I realized this wasn't just a chapter of my life changing. This was the start of an entirely different book. At first, I thought I could keep working. I was still early in my pregnancy, barely showing, and I told myself I'd push through, just keep my head down, do my job, and figure it out later. My manager at the office smiled politely when I told her the news, but the air in the room shifted. She didn't congratulate me. She didn't ask if I needed anything. She just said, "Thanks for the heads up," and changed the subject. Over the next few weeks, I was slowly erased. I stopped being invited to team meetings. My workload was quietly cut in half. People whispered in the break room when I walked in. One colleague who I used to grab lunch with told me, "I think they're assuming you won't be coming back." I wanted to prove them wrong. I wanted to be the woman who balanced it all, who worked full-time while growing a human inside her. But the fatigue hit me like a freight train. I was nauseous all day, my ankles ached, and I could barely stand for long periods without getting dizzy. Eventually, my hours were reduced. Then they asked if I'd consider going freelance, which in corporate speak means, "We're letting you go, but please don't make it messy." So I signed the papers, I packed up my desk, I walked out of that office and cried the entire train ride home. Not because I loved the job, but because it was the last thread tying me to my old life. And without that paycheck, the numbers didn't add up. Rent, insurance, groceries, prenatal care, it was all slipping out of reach. I tried to hold on. I cut corners, sold old furniture, canceled every subscription I had. I stopped ordering takeout. I started choosing between vitamins and bus fare. But within 2 months, my savings were gone. I fell behind on rent. My landlord gave me a week to move out. I begged for an extension. He offered a shrug. The night I left my apartment, the one with the 4th-floor view and the bookshelf I loved, I packed everything I could fit into 2 suitcases and a laundry basket. The rest I donated or left on the curb. I took a photo before I walked out. I don't know why. Maybe to remember who I used to be. A friend let me crash on her pull-out couch for a little while. I told her it was temporary. I told myself the same thing. But deep down, I knew something had broken. I wasn't just losing my home. I was losing the version of me who thought she had it all under control. Noah came into the world on a gray morning in late July. It wasn't a dramatic Hollywood birth scene. There were no tearful partners holding my hand, no family in the waiting room with balloons or flowers. It was just me, a tired nurse, and the sound of my own breath trying not to break. I remember gripping the hospital bed rails, sweat dripping down my temples, a deep ache in my back that no epidural could touch. I was terrified not just of the pain, but of what would come after. No one tells you that the scariest part of giving birth isn't the labor. It's what happens when the nurses leave and the silence creeps in. Noah weighed 6 pounds and 3 ounces. He had a scrunched little face, full head of dark hair, and he screamed like he was already angry at the world. When they placed him on my chest, I cried harder than I ever have in my life. Not just from love, though, there was love, deep and fierce, but from exhaustion, fear, grief, and the sudden weight of knowing that I was everything this tiny human had. We stayed in the hospital for 2 days. 2 days of fluorescent lights, diaper lessons from overly busy nurses, and trying to get a latch during 3 a.m. feedings while my arms trembled from fatigue. When it was time to leave, I looked at the discharge papers and thought, they're really letting me take him home? Like, that's it? There's no quiz, no checklist. No one asks if you're emotionally stable or financially prepared. They just wheel you out with a baby and a handful of pamphlets. The moment I stepped back into my friend's apartment, her pull-out couch, now my makeshift nursery, it hit me like a brick wall. Everything had changed. And yet nothing around me had. The laundry still sat unfolded. The fridge still buzzed when it opened. The outside world didn't pause just because I had a newborn in my arms. But I had changed, permanently, irrevocably. The first few weeks were a blur. Noah had colic, which meant he cried for hours with no clear reason. I rocked him until my arms went numb. I tried gas drops, warm baths, swaddling, white noise machines, everything the mommy blogs suggested. Nothing worked. I barely slept. I ate standing up, one-handed, while bouncing him on my hip. I showered maybe twice a week. I cried almost daily. And no one came. People love to show up for a baby shower. They love to comment, "So precious," on newborn photos. But when it's 2:17 a.m., and your baby won't stop screaming, and you haven't spoken to another adult in 48 hours, no one is knocking on your door. I wasn't just overwhelmed. I was drowning. There was no space for recovery, no room to process. I was bleeding, stitched, leaking, cracked open in every possible way, and still expected to function. Still expected to be grateful. Still expected to smile. But all I could do was survive. And even that felt like a stretch some days. After the first few weeks, the initial blur of newborn chaos faded into something more structured but not easier. Noah was still waking every 2 to 3 hours. His cries were less desperate, more habitual, but my body hadn't caught up. I was living in a permanent state of exhaustion, floating through each day on caffeine and leftover adrenaline. There was no time to bounce back, no grace period, no break. The moment my body stopped bleeding, I had to find a way to pay for diapers. WIC helped a little. A kind social worker connected me to a local food pantry. I started picking up formula samples wherever I could, clipping coupons like it was a full-time job. But even with that, the money never stretched far enough. Not in this economy. Not in this country. Not when you're doing it alone. So I hustled. I babysat for a mom down the street, strapping Noah to my chest while I entertained her toddler. I cleaned houses on weekends, scrubbing toilets while Noah napped in a secondhand stroller beside me. I signed up for food delivery apps and did late-night drop-offs when a neighbor's teenage daughter agreed to sit with Noah for $10 an hour. I said yes to everything, even when I wanted to say no. I was always doing the math in my head. If I take this job, I'll make $60. Subtract $15 for a sitter, $10 for gas, and maybe $5 for a frozen meal if I don't have time to cook. That leaves $30. Enough for formula and wipes for the week. And then I'd do it all again the next day. Some nights, I'd stare at Noah sleeping on the couch beside me and whisper, "I'm trying, baby. I'm trying so hard." And I was. God, I was. But it never felt like enough. Every dollar felt like a mountain. Every grocery trip was a calculation. Every small emergency like a fever, a broken heater, a late bill was a crisis. I couldn't afford daycare, so I took him everywhere. Grocery store, doctor's appointments, even to some of my jobs. I became an expert at carrying a baby on one hip and a mop in the other. I learned how to smile at judgmental strangers who looked at me like I was failing. I was failing sometimes, but I didn't have the luxury to stop. People say things like, "You're so strong," or "I don't know how you do it." But it never felt like strength. It felt like survival. Raw, desperate, constant. There were nights I skipped dinner so Noah could eat more. Days I reused baby wipes because I was running low. Moments I hid in the bathroom just to scream into a towel. No one saw that part. The world sees the baby photos. They don't see the woman breaking quietly behind them. At first, I told myself everything was temporary. The couch I was sleeping on, the side gigs, the ramen dinners, the second-hand stroller with a broken wheel. It was all just for now, a rough patch, a phase, something I'd move through and laugh about later. I'd whisper it like a prayer every night after Noah finally went down. Just for now. Just until I find steady work. Just until he sleeps through the night. Just until I get back on my feet. But weeks became months, and months blurred into years. Noah turned 1, then 2, and I was still chasing late payments, still piecing together jobs that barely paid minimum wage, still living in places that didn't feel like home, just temporary shelters where I could rest my head and tell myself, soon things will get better. But they didn't. At least, not in the way I'd hoped. The just for now turned into, this is your life now. And I didn't even notice when it happened. There wasn't one big moment, no explosion, no obvious turning point. Just a slow erosion of hope, like rain carving into rock over time. I stopped making plans, stopped thinking long term, stopped dreaming. I wasn't living anymore, I was managing. Managing schedules, bills, tantrums, expectations. Managing my pain. Managing my silence. And the scariest part was, I got used to it. I didn't realize I was vanishing. Until one day, I looked around at my life, the scattered toys, the cracked phone screen, the sink full of dishes, and realized that I had been surviving for so long, I'd forgotten what it felt like to want something more. Somewhere along the way, I stopped being Rachel. It didn't happen all at once. There was no big moment where I looked in the mirror and said, I don't know who I am anymore. It was slower than that, quieter, like a fog that crept in day by day, stealing little pieces of me while I wasn't paying attention. First, it was the little things. I stopped painting, told myself I didn't have time. Then I stopped listening to music, unless it was lullabies. I started eating, standing up, stopped texting friends back, wore the same 3 oversized t-shirts on rotation. And no one noticed. Because I was still showing up. I was still getting things done. Noah was fed. The bills were mostly paid. I kept smiling at neighbors, waving politely, answering, "I'm good," when people asked how I was, even when I wasn't. But behind closed doors, I was disappearing. I wasn't doing anything just for me. Every hour of my day belonged to someone else, to my child, to survival, to the next task on my never-ending list. I became a role. Mom. Not a person. Not a woman with thoughts and dreams and messy, complicated desires. Just mom. And people treated me that way. Strangers in the grocery store would smile at Noah and ignore me. Doctors talked about the baby's milestones, but never once asked about my mental health. Friends assumed I couldn't come out, couldn't talk, couldn't engage, and after a while, they stopped trying altogether. Even I stopped trying. Because when no one sees you, you start to believe you're not worth seeing. And the worst part? I missed myself. But I didn't know how to find me again. It happened on a Tuesday. Not the kind you remember for anything important. Just another quiet, unraveling the kind that doesn't scream, but whispers that something inside you is gone. I was brushing my teeth while Noah sat on the bathroom floor, whining because his cereal was too soggy. My hair was greasy, pulled into a messy bun. There was a stain on my sweatshirt, I think, from spaghetti the night before. The mirror was streaked with fingerprints and toothpaste splatter. And for some reason, in that ordinary moment, I looked at my reflection, and everything inside me cracked. I stared at myself, really stared, and realized I didn't recognize the woman looking back at me. Her eyes looked empty. Not tired, not sad, just gone. Her shoulders were hunched. Her skin was pale. There was no softness left in her face. No spark, no light. Just a hollowed-out version of someone I used to know. And before I could stop myself, I whispered out loud, "Where did I go?" It wasn't a question I meant to ask. It just slipped out like a truth I'd been holding in my chest for too long. Noah didn't even hear me. He was busy kicking the bathroom door with his tiny foot, frustrated at the world, unaware that his mom was breaking right in front of him. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, toothbrush in hand, frozen in that moment of aching realization. This wasn't burnout. This wasn't exhaustion. This was grief. Grief for the version of me that used to dream. Grief for the life I thought I'd live. Grief for the woman who used to feel whole. It wasn't until that moment staring into the mirror, whispering to no one, that I realized how much of myself I had given away without noticing. Piece by piece, hour by hour, all in the name of survival. And that's when I knew something had to change. Bringing Noah home from the hospital should have felt like a beginning, a warm, gentle start to our new life. Instead, it felt like being dropped into a storm, without a map, without shelter, and with a newborn strapped to my chest. The pull-out couch became our bed, changing table, and nursing station. The floor was scattered with diapers, burp cloths, and bottles. I didn't have a nursery or pastel wallpaper or white noise machines. I had a fan that squeaked and a lamp that flickered when I turned it on too fast. Noah cried. A lot. Not the soft movie scene baby cries. These were guttural, soul-shaking screams that came out of nowhere and lasted for hours. Colic, the pediatrician said. Nothing to do but write it out. So I rocked him. I walked laps around the tiny living room at 3 a.m., singing lullabies I barely remembered, crying right along with him. Some nights, I'd sit on the bathroom floor with the fan on just to drown it out, not because I didn't love him, but because I didn't know how much more I could take. There were no visitors, no meal trains, no one knocking on the door to give me a break or hold the baby while I took a shower. I was healing from labor, bleeding and sore, with cracked nipples and eyes that burned from sleep deprivation. And yet, somehow, I was expected to function to be grateful, joyful, glowing. But I wasn't glowing. I was falling apart. There's no manual for that part of motherhood. No one tells you the scariest moments aren't when the baby's crying, it's when you are. And no one is there to hear it. They tell you motherhood is beautiful. They post the filtered pictures, soft lighting, matching outfits, baby's first smile. But they don't talk about what it's like to do it alone. They don't tell you how heavy it feels to be the only one who hears every cry, the only one to wake up for every feeding, the only one to make every decision, big or small, without a second opinion. There's no, "Can you take the baby while I shower?" No one saying, "Why don't you go lie down? I've got this." There's just you and the baby, and the endless list of things no one else sees. People mean well, but their advice feels hollow. Sleep when the baby sleeps. Okay, but when do I eat? When do I wash bottles? When do I cry in peace? You're doing great. Am I? Because I haven't brushed my teeth today, and I just fed my baby the same jar of peas 3 days in a row because I can't afford anything else. Support groups? Most of them were built for moms with partners, women who could vent about how their husbands didn't do enough. I couldn't relate. I was the husband. I was the wife. I was everything. And somehow, society still found a way to judge me. Too tired? You're lazy. Asking for help? You're weak. Struggling? You should have thought about that before getting pregnant. No one tells you that being a single mom isn't just hard. It's isolating in a way that rewrites your sense of self. And the hardest part? You start to believe it's your fault. I didn't know I was depressed. I thought I was just tired, like new mom tired, the kind everyone joked about in memes and parenting blogs. But this wasn't that. This was different. It was the kind of tired that made me stare at the wall for 10 minutes and forget what I was doing. The kind that made me cry in the laundry room because I dropped a sock. The kind that made me feel like I was underwater present, but muffled, blurred, barely breathing. I'd go days without speaking to another adult. Sometimes I'd look in the mirror and not recognize my own face, the dark circles, the hollow cheeks, the eyes that didn't shine anymore. And still, I kept telling myself, this is normal. It's just hard right now. I'll bounce back soon. But I didn't. Because I wasn't just tired. I was hurting. And the guilt made it worse. Because how could I feel this way when I had a healthy baby? How could I admit that sometimes I didn't feel bonded, didn't feel joy, didn't feel anything? I loved Noah, fiercely. But some days, I went through the motions like a robot: feed, change, rock, repeat, and then cried alone on the bathroom floor, ashamed of the numbness I couldn't explain. I wasn't lazy. I wasn't ungrateful. I was just broken in places no one could see. And no one asked. Not the pediatrician, not the neighbors, not even my own family. Because when you're a single mom, people assume strength. But sometimes, strength is just a mask for someone who's silently unraveling. Every decision became a calculation. Should I buy diapers or bus fare? Can I stretch this $20 for 3 days if I skip one meal? If Noah gets sick, can I afford to take him to urgent care, or should I just hope it's nothing? There was never enough, not time, not money, not energy. I was constantly one broken appliance or one late paycheck away from total crisis. Food stamps helped, but they didn't cover diapers or wipes. Community clinics were crowded and underfunded. And every job I could find, cleaning, babysitting, food delivery, paid barely enough to survive. There were days I skipped lunch so Noah could have more formula. Days I stood in line at the food pantry, clutching a number, praying they didn't run out. Days I counted coins at the checkout line with flushed cheeks and silent shame. And my body? It started to fail me. The fatigue was bone deep. I couldn't remember the last time I'd slept more than 4 hours straight. My back ached from carrying Noah. My hands cracked from cleaning chemicals. My feet swollen from walking everywhere. But I kept going, because there was no one else. No sick days, no backup plan, no "let me take over." Just me, running on fumes, feeding Noah first, always. Telling myself I'd rest later when things got better. But later never came. And I was running on empty, every single day. It hit me one afternoon while standing in line at the pharmacy. Noah was fussing in the carrier strapped to my chest, and I was digging through my wallet, trying to find enough change for infant Tylenol. The woman behind me sighed loudly. The cashier avoided eye contact. No one offered help. No one smiled. No one saw me. I wasn't expecting a parade. But in that moment, I felt like I could vanish right there in aisle 3 and no one would notice. I wasn't Rachel. I wasn't even that woman with the baby. I was just another tired face in a long line of tired faces. And it wasn't just strangers. Friends stopped checking in. Family stopped asking how I was doing. Even I stopped asking myself. I told everyone I was fine. Because what else could I say? That I was lonely in a way that went deeper than silence? That I felt like a ghost in my own life? It's hard to admit how much it hurts to be needed so completely, and yet feel so completely unseen. One night, after Noah had finally fallen asleep, I sat in the dark holding a cup of cold tea I never drank, and for the first time in a long time, I let myself feel everything. Not just the exhaustion, but the grief, the anger, the loneliness. And then came a quieter truth, not loud, not dramatic, just a whisper. If nothing changes, this will be your life forever. It wasn't a threat. It was a wake-up call. And in that moment, I didn't know how to fix it. But I knew I couldn't stay lost much longer. It started subtly. I stopped listening to music when Noah was born. Not because I didn't want to, but because there was always something else to do, a bottle to clean, a diaper to change, a nap that needed guarding like it was sacred. Silence became more practical. Background noise just got in the way. My sketchbook gathered dust on a shelf. My journals sat untouched in a drawer. Books I once devoured now sat half-read, their bookmarks frozen in time. I didn't even notice at first. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd pick things back up when things settled down. But they never really did. And over time, I stopped reaching for them altogether. I began wearing the same 3 outfits every week, soft, stretchy things with stains. I stopped trying to scrub out. My reflection became unfamiliar. My voice sounded different. I laughed less. And when I did, it felt like it came from someone else's mouth. No one called me Rachel anymore. I was Mom at the pediatrician's office. Noah's mom at daycare. Ma'am at the grocery store. And I responded to all of it without hesitation. Because somewhere in between sleepless nights and grocery lists, I'd accepted that the old me, the woman who once had opinions and favorite colors and dreams she dared to say out loud, had slowly faded into the background. And no one even noticed she was gone. Not even me. I used to feel seen. Maybe not in big ways, but at least I had a presence, a personality, a name. Now, I was mostly a function. At the pediatrician's office, no one asked how I was doing. They asked about feeding schedules and diaper changes. They smiled at Noah and said, "You're doing great, Mom." Like it was a title, not a name, not a person, just a role. At the grocery store, strangers offered advice but never conversation. You should try the organic wipes. Maybe he's teething. No one asked what kind of music I liked. No one asked what I dreamed about before becoming a mother. No one asked if I was happy. Even the people closest to me stopped checking in. Conversations became transactional. Do you need anything for the baby? Is he sleeping through the night yet? I don't remember the last time someone asked, "How's Rachel?" I didn't expect parades or sympathy. I just missed being seen, really seen. Not as a caregiver, not as a tired woman holding a toddler, but as a whole person with edges and colors and stories that stretched beyond a stroller. But when everyone stops seeing you, it's only a matter of time before you stop seeing yourself too. Every time I thought about doing something just for me, reading a book, going for a walk alone, buying a coffee that wasn't on sale, guilt would flood in before I could even finish the thought. You should be saving that money for diapers. You don't have time for walks, the laundry's piling up. What kind of mother puts herself first? It was like an invisible referee lived inside my head, constantly blowing a whistle every time I tried to step out of the role of mom and into anything that resembled me. I told myself it was noble, that this was what good mothers did. They sacrificed. They didn't ask for more. They didn't need rest. They didn't need space. But deep down, something else was whispering. You're allowed to want things too. And that whisper scared me. Because what if I listened? What if I admitted that I was tired of surviving? What if I said, out loud that I missed feeling alive, not just needed. There was a war inside me. The part that believed motherhood meant disappearing, and the part that quietly begged not to be erased. I didn't want to stop being a mother. I just didn't want motherhood to be the end of me. And I didn't know if the world would allow both to exist at the same time. It was a Saturday morning, sometime after 6 a.m. Noah had just finished breakfast and was playing with a wooden train on the floor. I was staring blankly into my coffee, cold, untouched, still in my pajamas from 2 nights ago. I must have looked extra worn out that day, because suddenly, Noah looked up at me with his big brown eyes and asked, "Mommy, are you sad?" Those 4 words didn't come from a therapist or a friend. They came from a toddler and they shattered me. Just 4 little words. 4 words from a toddler who couldn't yet tie his shoes but could already read my soul better than most adults. I froze. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because I did. And I didn't want him to carry it. I didn't want him to grow up thinking his mom was always tired, always heavy, always somewhere else, even when she was right in front of him. I knelt beside him, pulled him into my arms, and cried. The kind of cry that doesn't come with noise. Just a slow, steady leak of everything you've been holding in for too long. That moment, quiet, ordinary, became a line in the sand. A realization. If I kept living like this, Noah would grow up with a version of me that wasn't fully present, and I would miss his life, too buried under the weight of a life I never gave myself permission to reclaim. I didn't know what to do yet, but I knew I couldn't keep pretending I was okay. I didn't wake up one day magically knowing how to find myself again. There was no big transformation, no inspirational playlist, no viral quote on Instagram that suddenly made everything clear. What came instead were whispers, tiny nudges, quiet invitations to remember who I was before I forgot. One day, I picked up a pen and wrote in an old notebook, not a journal entry, just a sentence. I miss myself. Another day, I played a Norah Jones song while Noah napped. I cried through the whole thing, not because it was sad, but because it felt like home. I started drawing again. Not the way I used to, with watercolors and intention, but on scratch paper. Crude, messy doodles. Lines that didn't mean anything except, I made this. I started lighting a candle before bed. Not for Noah, not for the house, just for me. It was awkward at first, doing things that weren't productive. I kept catching myself rushing, expecting results, asking, what's the point? But healing isn't efficient. And finding yourself isn't a return, it's a reintroduction. I wasn't trying to become the old Rachel. She didn't exist anymore. I was meeting the new one, the one who had survived, who was softer in some places, sharper in others, and finally starting to take up space again. I still don't have it all figured out. There are mornings when I wake up and still feel like a shadow of myself. There are nights when I question if I'm doing enough as a mom, as a woman, as a human being. But something has shifted. It's not loud or obvious. It doesn't look like success or confidence. It looks like presence. It's the way I pause for a breath before answering Noah's endless questions. The way I look at myself in the mirror and offer a soft, "You're trying, and that's enough." The way I no longer apologize for needing a moment alone. I don't know exactly who I'm becoming, but I know she's worth meeting. And maybe that's what healing really is, not snapping back to who you were, but slowly becoming someone who honors both the person you lost and the one you're becoming. This isn't the end of my story. It's not even the middle. It's the beginning, messy, slow, unsure, but honest. And for the first time in a long time, that feels like enough. So if you're listening, and you feel like you've lost yourself too, I want you to know you're not gone. You're just waiting to be remembered. It didn't happen all at once. There was no explosion, no dramatic collapse, no rock-bottom moment that could be turned into a neat Instagram quote. It was more like a slow, silent erosion, pieces of me washing away, quietly, day after day, until one afternoon I realized I had nothing left to hold on to. It was a Thursday. I remember because there was an overdue electric bill on the counter, and Noah had spilled applesauce all over the floor while I was on the phone trying to reschedule a shift I couldn't make because he had a fever. I hadn't slept in 2 nights. I was still wearing the same leggings from the day before, and I'd just eaten the last granola bar for lunch, not because I wasn't hungry, but because I didn't want to waste the last bit of milk on myself. I sat down on the kitchen floor. Not dramatically, not with a scream or a crash. I just sank down slowly, with my back against the cabinet, and stared at the peeling linoleum, like it was going to offer me a solution. And then I cried. Not loud, not messy. Just the kind of crying that leaks out of you when you've been holding it in for too long, soft, steady, almost silent. There was no single thing that broke me. It was all of it. The diapers, the bills, the loneliness, the invisible labor, the fact that no one had hugged me in weeks, the fact that I didn't even remember what I liked anymore, the fact that I was tired of pretending that this was just what motherhood looked like. The scariest part? No one knew I was breaking. Not my family, not my old friends, not even the people who saw me every week at the grocery store or the park, because I was still showing up, still smiling, still packing lunchboxes and sending thank you texts and answering, "I'm good, just tired," whenever anyone asked. But inside, I was gone. And no one noticed. That night, after I'd cleaned up the applesauce and gotten Noah to sleep, I sat in bed staring at the ceiling and thought, is this really it? Is this what I fought so hard to hold on to? Is this what I sacrificed everything for? And then, without warning, a thought slipped in quiet and sharp. What if I don't have to live like this? It startled me, because until that moment, I had accepted it all as fact. That motherhood meant constant depletion. That survival was success. That I didn't deserve rest, or joy, or space, until everything and everyone else was taken care of. But that thought, that tiny, rebellious spark, kept repeating itself. What if I don't have to live like this? And underneath that came another, softer voice. What if you deserve more? I didn't have answers. I didn't have a plan or money or time or support. But I had one new thing I hadn't felt in a long time. Curiosity. What if I could feel like a person again? What would it look like to wake up and want to be awake? What would it feel like to laugh and mean it? To eat without rushing? To take a shower and actually enjoy the hot water? Those questions weren't indulgent. They were survival. Because somewhere deep down, I knew if I didn't change something, I wasn't just going to lose myself. I was going to disappear completely. And here's the part that still brings tears to my eyes. I looked at Noah sleeping next to me, and for the first time, I didn't just feel love. I felt responsibility not just to care for him, but to show him what a whole woman looks like. Because what was I teaching him by erasing myself? That women don't get to have joy? That mothers are meant to suffer quietly? That love means never asking for anything in return? I couldn't let that be his blueprint. And I couldn't let that be my legacy. So I made a quiet promise to myself, nothing grand, nothing loud. I'm going to try, for me, even if it's messy, even if no one claps, even if it takes a long, long time. I didn't wake up the next day transformed. There was no glow, no montage moment, just another morning, another diaper, another microwave breakfast. But inside me, something had shifted. I had finally said the thing I'd been afraid to say. I'm not okay and I want more. And that was the beginning of everything. After the breaking point came the stillness. Not peace, not clarity, just stillness. That heavy kind of quiet that settles in after a storm when everything around you looks the same, but nothing inside you does. I didn't know how to move forward. All I knew was that I couldn't keep moving the way I had been. So I started small. Not because I was brave, but because I was exhausted. Big changes felt impossible. But tiny ones, the ones no one else could see, those I could manage. One day, I turned on a song I used to love while washing dishes. It played softly over the hum of the sink. And for a moment, just a flicker, I remembered what it felt like to exist, for something other than surviving. Another day, I scribbled a single sentence in a notebook. I miss feeling like a person. No goals, no resolutions. Just a quiet truth, written for no one but me. I started doing small things with intention. Lighting a candle before bed, wearing the shirt that made me feel like I still had a body, not just a utility, taking 3 deep breaths before picking Noah up from daycare. Not because they solved anything, but because they reminded me I was still here. At first, it felt wrong, indulgent, selfish, like I was cheating motherhood. Guilt came rushing in, whispering, "You should be folding laundry. You don't have time for this. This isn't productive." But I kept going, because something in me, something very quiet but very alive, was saying, "If you don't take care of you, no one will." That thought sat with me for days. And then another followed. What if your child deserves a mother who doesn't disappear? That one hit harder. Because I'd spent so long thinking that sacrificing myself was love, that if I just gave everything, my time, my energy, my identity, then I was doing it right. But the truth was, Noah didn't need a mother who was perfect. He needed a mother who was present. And I couldn't be present if I was always empty. So I let myself begin. Not with fanfare, not with a plan, just with a quiet permission. You're allowed to exist too. I started drawing again, not the detailed watercolors I used to paint, but quick pencil sketches on crumpled paper, in stolen 5-minute pockets between tantrums and dinner prep. I made a playlist of songs that reminded me of the girl I used to be. I listened to them while doing chores. Sometimes I danced in the kitchen, and sometimes I just stood still and let the music hold me. I texted an old friend I hadn't spoken to in a year. All I said was, "I miss you. I've been overwhelmed. I'm trying again." She replied, "I miss you too. I'm still here." It wasn't a full return. It wasn't about reclaiming who I used to be. Because, honestly, that version of me didn't exist anymore. Motherhood had changed me, cracked me open, broken me down, reshaped everything I thought I knew about love and self-worth. But maybe that wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning of something deeper. I wasn't trying to go back. I was trying to go inward, to find the version of me who could hold all of it, the exhaustion, the devotion, the rage, the tenderness, without apology. Some days I still faltered. There were nights I collapsed into bed wondering if I'd made any progress at all. But then I'd remember, healing isn't linear. It's not a finish line. It's a relationship with yourself. And relationships take time, effort, grace. I began showing myself grace. Not always, but more than before. I stopped calling myself lazy when I needed rest. I stopped measuring my worth in productivity. I stopped shrinking in conversations, letting "just a mom" be my label. Because I'm not just a mom. I'm a woman. I'm a human. I'm a living, breathing person with needs and feelings and fire inside her. And I want Noah to see that. I want him to know what a whole woman looks like. I want him to grow up seeing that care and strength can coexist. That softness isn't weakness. That love doesn't have to come with self-erasure. That's the kind of mother I'm becoming now. Not the one who has it all figured out. Not the one who never yells or cries or forgets the school lunch. But the one who keeps showing up. Who keeps choosing herself not instead of her child, but for him. Because when I choose me, I teach him to do the same. And maybe that's the most sacred gift I can offer him. If you're still here, thank you. Thank you for sitting with me in the mess, in the silence, in the places most people avoid, the moments we don't post on social media, the feelings we're taught to swallow, the versions of ourselves we've buried under to-do lists and dinner prep. I want to say something to you, the woman listening, maybe in her car or doing dishes, or lying awake at night with that same ache I used to feel in my chest. You are not invisible. I know it feels like you are. Like you've become a background character in your own story. Like everyone sees your role, but not your soul. But I promise you, you're still in there. You're still the girl who used to laugh so loud, her stomach hurt. The woman who had dreams that didn't involve grocery budgets or nap schedules. The human who deserves love that doesn't always ask for more. I'm not here to tell you to fix it all. This isn't a motivational speech. It's just a soft truth. You matter. Even when you don't feel seen. Even when you're tired. Even when you haven't done a single thing today except keep a small human alive. That is not nothing. That is grace in motion. But also, you deserve more than just survival. You are allowed to want more. You are allowed to rest. You are allowed to take up space. To say no. To say yes. To not know what you need, but still ask to be held emotionally, spiritually, even just through someone else's words. If no one else has told you lately, let me be the one to say it. You're doing better than you think. Not because you're getting it all right, but because you keep showing up. Because you're still here, still listening, still breathing. And maybe that's enough for today. Maybe healing doesn't look like a fresh start. Maybe it looks like washing your face and whispering to yourself, I'm proud of you for not giving up. I spent years thinking I had to earn rest. That love had to come after perfection. That self-worth had to be proven. But I was wrong. You don't have to earn the right to feel whole. You already are, even if you're cracked in places. Even if you're unsure. Even if you're rebuilding from nothing. Especially then. If you're listening and you feel like you've lost yourself, I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me. You are not lost. You are waiting to be remembered. And that remembering might take time. It might hurt. But every step you take back toward yourself, no matter how small, is a rebellion against the lie that says you're only valuable when you're useful to others. You are valuable just because you exist. You are not what you do. You are not what you produce. You are not just someone's mom, someone's partner, someone's helper. You are you. And that is sacred. So take the next breath. Take the next step. Choose one small act of love for yourself today. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be yours. And if no one sees it, I do. I'm rooting for you. You are not alone. You never were.